Martin Consulting. Thanks so much, Mark, for joining us this afternoon, at least here in India. Talk to us, Mark, about what this development means, largely from an aviation perspective, from an Indian aviation standpoint. How large is the development? Give us a sense on what Willie will likely bring to the table.
Hi, Harsh. Thanks for having me. I think we have to understand that, frankly, it caught me off guard, and it's very strange that a low-cost hybrid airline would be getting somebody who comes from running full-service carriers all his life. Willie Walsh has been with British Airways, Aer Lingus. He was with quite a few airlines. He was with Futura. His core focus over the years has been full-service airlines. We have to also be mindful that IATA is a lobby group. It's an association. And IATA globally does not openly acknowledge or fully appreciate low-cost carriers because IATA and low-cost carriers have been at loggerheads with each other for the last 20 years. IATA till today does not accept Ryanair, Wizz Air, EasyJet, JetBlue, all the low-cost carriers in the world. And I might add, low-cost carriers have a far higher growth trajectory than full-service carriers. I'm a little surprised as to why would Rahulbhatia bring in somebody from IATA when IATA themselves don't openly like LCCs because they take on full-service carriers. So I think clearly, I think the bigger point I'm trying to drive here is Indigo changing? Are we going to see an Indigo that's no longer a low-cost carrier or a hybrid carrier? And is Indigo going to become a full-service airline? It's like getting somebody who runs the Marriott or the Fairmount or the Oberoi to manage a McDonald's. It doesn't make sense. And Willie Walsh when he was in British Airways, the whole idea was to dominate the market, to create a monopoly. Then in Aer Lingus, he tried to do that. Then he moved over to other airlines, and eventually he went to IATA because IATA does nothing but, price cartelization. 18 years ago, the European Union took IATA to court for creating cartelization of prices and monopoly, which hurt competition. I'm a little surprised. This is a bit of a shocker, and I think where all this comes up, Harsh, is I have a very strong feeling that the Indigo that we all know for the last 18 years clearly has the biggest identity crisis. And I think they've been intimidated. Clearly, they've been intimidated a lot by Air India, and now they will be transitioning out of the LCC world, which is very strange because oil is now going to go dramatically and drastically high post the Iran crisis. We all know the dollar is now 95. Cost of spare parts are going to be more expensive. Lease rentals have become more dearer. So instead of Indigo really focusing on the low-cost model, re-optimizing its cost, they're bringing somebody who doesn't know anything about low cost, except for being a value and a large full-service carrier airline logic. So this is something which is a very worrisome to me, and I'm sure it would be worrisome to investors and shareholders as well.
I take your point, I understand that. So you're saying that strategy doesn't match with the kind of leadership they're bringing in. You don't believe Wiley can adapt to the kind of service offering that Indigo does. In fact, now that Indigo is going global, you could well see a shift there as well to a certain extent. You don't believe, Mark, that is something that the airline can possibly take in terms of direction from Wiley?
I'll put this in a very simple analogy. It's like getting somebody from, the Maurice Sheraton Bukhara who makes dal makhani, and you want him to make vada pav tomorrow outside the railway station. Okay, it just doesn't make logical sense. And I think, the bigger fear in all this, Harsh, is that it is really sad and shocking, and it's also very true that we're unable to get an astute, strong CEO from India or from Asia or from Europe who comes with strong low-cost elements, whether FMCG or somebody like from Pepsi or Coca-Cola would have worked great for Indigo. Somebody from, where you will have a strong consumer outreach. somebody from maybe a Samsung or somebody from a services industry or telecom, where you're dealing with consumers, you're dealing with revenue paying consumers, that would have been much better. Why on earth would you bring somebody who's all his life, and I'll tell you something, there's a very unique bond that all IATA airlines share, and that is all IATA airlines are in utter losses. Okay. LCCs, on the other hand, are the only airlines that are extremely lean and extremely agile and profitable. You bring somebody from two totally different diametric opposing worlds, and you want the guy to gel here and blend. Either he's gonna be, either he's gonna end up destroying Indigo, or by some crazy chance in hell, he'll just pull out 5 years and walk away. I don't see any great value add coming to Indigo. And Wiley Walsh has got no experience working in Asia, let alone India. I'd agree if somebody comes from Malaysia or somebody comes from Indonesia or Philippines or Hong Kong for that matter, where you understand the Asian mindset, because Asian travelers and consumers are extremely discerning and extremely shrewd. We know what we want from services and travel, right? Now, why bring somebody from a European environment where everything is, 900 to 1500 euros a ticket, where you want to come in a world where you're competing with 30, 40, or 50 or 60 euros, which is about 8 to 10,000 rupees a ticket. It doesn't make sense. So, as you rightly point out, Harsh, I agree with you. I think the fear is it's shocking that we can't get a more relevant CEO to run Indigo. And I'm sure tomorrow morning shareholders are going to be shuddering when markets open.
So that's the only way to rationalize this. Is that what you're saying, Mark? That there's just no capability there within the segment or the sector, and therefore the pick with regard to William Walsh?
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, maybe the guy who runs EasyJet, or maybe the managers under Stelios, or maybe somebody from Wizz Air or JetBlue, or some of the far more astute, accomplished LCCs, Lion Air, or maybe Bartik, Vietjet, some of the more stable, sound LCCs. If they get a CEO from there, I'd probably say, hey, great choice, guys. At least you know what you're doing. But you get somebody who has no relevance or understanding of LCCs, let alone our travel market, is a recipe for disaster, man. It's not going to work. It just doesn't work from that perspective. But
point taken, Mark. Mark, I wonder if I can touch upon for a minute or so. You spoke about how crude has spiked, and that could impact, of course, the aviation industry. That's the first order impact that the aviation industry sees. How do you believe that India is going to manage this? Because, of course, there are meetings at the government level. A group of ministers going to be having a meeting and trying to figure out what the solution to this could be. But at the moment, of course, the airlines are taking a bit of a knock. Do you believe that there can be a resolution to this?
Harsh is going to get a whole lot worse, because what we're seeing now is a spike in crude, which has come post supply shortage, post Venezuela and the US petrodollar control. When the real impact from what we're seeing in Iran comes into play. See, please understand, right now we have stocks which are February and March stocks, which will spill over to April. Once we start buying fresh stocks in April, we're looking at the mid of April and the end of May to be the worst ever in terms of airline operating costs, with costs going up. Okay, and this is not going to work well for at least India. We're expecting costs to go up by 25-30% just on jet fuel. And fuel and aircraft leasing, followed by maintenance, are two of the largest costs. So fuel is now up by 20%. The dollar is depreciated, the rupee is depreciated on the dollar by almost 15%, so it's 95. So imagine the impact on the cost of ticket. Now, what's going to happen is eventually the poor consumer, the traveler in India, is going to suffer, and most parts of Asia and most parts of the world. The kids who want to go back on holidays, return back to college, corporates are now going to rethink air travel. Those who have to travel will travel. I mean, like I'm in Vienna. I had to travel for work, and I'm here for work, and I paid the ticket, which is twice the price of what I usually pay. But I can't help it. Work doesn't stop for a lot of people and for billions out there, right? But it's going to really add a strain on everybody: corporate P&Ls, marketing budgets, personal households. So, the dynamics of where we are today is dramatically shifting. Things are rough. We're in trouble times. And as far as Indigo is concerned, I'll be surprised if Wiley Wash pulls out a rabbit of a hat with some magic trick and says, I've got the ultimate mantra for Indigo, which I don't think is going to happen. We're clearly going to see rough times, at least in our market in India. And that's very, very unfortunate, because we're supposed to get 600 brand new aircraft coming in from Airbus and Boeing in the next 2 years. So clearly something just doesn't make sense.
Mark, point taken and point very, very well made. Thank you so much for coming in and giving us that perspective. We'll let you go on that note. Viewers, what we're going to do...
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be with you, always.
Thank you, Mark. Fabulous speaking. Viewers, what we'll do is dip into a very short break. We'll continue coverage on the other side. Stay with us.